Thank you. All right, I think I can go on now. All right, I just wanted to be sure that everyone can hear me. Can I go on? Is everybody hearing me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, great. Thank you. And we do have a lot of people that have joined already. So good evening. All right, my name is Chinedu Oluwadamilola, and I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of Aisen. And I'm very, very honored to be here this evening. Very glad, very honored. Glad about what Aisen is doing as we all work together to give the best kind of education that we can possibly have to our children here in Nigeria. The Aisen series is one that has come to stay. We started the Aisen series, speaker series, close to 10 years now. And over the years, we have had very good topics. And the topic that was chosen for this year's Aisen speaker series is one that can only be described as apt and in tune with the times. There are so many things that happen around the world and happen in our schools, happen in our homes, happen in our neighborhoods. And it is important that we realize what constitutes child abuse, what constitutes safety for children, and what we can do. And I'm very glad that we have seasoned presenters and panelists this afternoon who will speak to us, enlighten us, clarify misconceptions, and help us to stay on the right path as regards what safeguarding is, not only in our schools, but in our homes, places of religious worship, in our communities. Children ought to be safe wherever they are. And a child who is safe will grow up in a more wholesome way than one who is not. So I welcome everybody to this Aisen speaker series as we talk about safeguarding and child protection. It is no longer something that should be left for some people. It is everybody's business. So I'm very glad that we're having this, and I welcome the very many people who have signed up for this. You would be spending your evening in a way that is most beneficial for yourself, for the children that you teach if you work in a school, and even for our homes and communities. So I welcome everybody once again. Thank you very much for coming. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Oluwadamilola. Thank you for the wonderful welcome address. Now I want to thank you all once again for taking time out to join this meeting. The Aisen Influence Group decided on safeguarding as a theme for this year's speaker series because we cannot overemphasize the need to continue to identify warning signs of any form of abuse, neglect, or harm to children in our different schools. And we want to talk about how to also alert the authorities without the fear of being victimized. Today, we have 4 very powerful speakers, who will be talking us through what safeguarding is all about, and what statements we need to make as schools to protect our students. We want to also be hearing from the Lagos State government on the policies and governance structure that the state has put in place to protect the children. And we have 2 powerful speakers from COBIS who will be telling us how we as school leaders, can safeguard the school further in terms of safer recruitment. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to invite our very first speaker today. She's Mrs. Uzochi Madueke. She's the head of primary, and the designated safeguarding leader at the Riverbank School in Victoria Island. She's an assessment leader and a level 3 certified safeguarding lead. Uzochi is an innovative educator with so many years of experience. She's an ardent believer in inclusive education, a trained autism services practitioner, and the unequivocal need to support children with special needs. She's passionate about raising a cultural awareness of the Nigerian child and the promotion of moral values through education. Mrs. Uzochi Madueke, welcome and over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jamide. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I would really like to thank Aisen for inviting me to discuss this very, very important topic. And I'm going to get right to it, all right? And I want us to know that by the end of this session, our target is to be able to understand what is child protection, what is safeguarding, and what is our role in ensuring that the children who are around us are safe and secure in the environment where they find themselves. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now. I hope I'll be able to do that. All right. Okay. All right. So, as I've said before, at the end of this session, everyone is going to go away with a basic awareness of safeguarding and child protection. It's a really vast topic, okay? And I'm going to try and do it justice in just 20 minutes. We'll see how it goes, all right? So I want us to start off with some statistics, okay? Very important statistics. Now, the WHO says that 3 in 1 children globally, aged between 2 to 4 years, regularly suffer from some form of physical punishment or psychological violence at the hands of their parents or their caregivers. And about 120 million girls and young women below the age of 20 years have suffered some form of forced sexual contact, okay? So it's the form of contact that they are not in approval of. Now, coming home to Nigeria, because we are in Nigeria, okay? Now, 6 in 10 children, according to UNICEF in Nigeria, have experienced some form of violence. 6 in 10. That's very alarming. That's over half of the children in Nigeria have experienced some form of violence. Now, 1 in 4 girls have been victims of sexual violence, and 10% of boys have also been victims of sexual violence. I really don't know about you, but these numbers are alarming. And I think we should all be very, very concerned, not just about the Nigerian child, but about every other child around the world. And that's why we're here, okay? We're going to be discussing how can I help, okay? What is safeguarding? What is child protection? And how can I be of help to all these children who are suffering, okay? So now, let's move on. Before we talk about what safeguarding and child protection is, all right? I want to believe that everyone here has a basic understanding of the rights of a child. Like, we all know that children have rights, okay? And we are able to identify some of those rights. So I'm going to ask, I know there are a lot of people here, so maybe you can just, in the chat box, okay? Just name one right of a child that you know. I need people to put down one right of a child that you know. I know we're all familiar with the rights of a child. So what rights do we know? Let's put that down in the chat box. Let me see. I can see the right to education. Very good. The right to live. The right to choose. Okay. The right to be heard. The right to housing. Yes. So I can see that many of us, we all know what the rights of the child are. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Excellent. So now, Okay, so the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child that was held in 1989, okay, identified a little over 40 rights of a child. And the Nigerian Constitution has about 11 rights of a child listed there. And they have gone even further in the Nigerian Child's Rights Act to identify about 18 rights of a child. So that means we should all know that the rights of a child are extremely important. And these rights range from the children's need to have their basic needs met, okay? We're talking about the rights to safety, okay? We're talking about their rights to be heard by every single one of us, okay? And who is responsible for ensuring that the rights of the children are met? Every single one of us here. And that by that, I mean me and you as an educator, a parent, whatever it is that you do. If you have a child around you, it is your responsibility to ensure that that child is safe and secure. And that is everyone above the age of. Because anytime you're going to hear me talking about a child in this presentation, okay, I'm going to be talking about a child from the age of 1 day old, or even before they are born, till the age of 18. And I'm going to explain why I said before they are born as we move along, all right? So, now, how is this linked to child protection? It's impossible for you to be able to protect the child if you are not aware of the rights of that child. If you don't know what the rights are, you're not going to know when the rights of a child have been infringed upon. So if you understand what the rights of a child are, then you're going to be able to protect. So what is child protection? Okay, UNICEF gives a definition of child protection as the prevention of and response to exploitation, okay, abuse, neglect, harmful practices, and violence against children, okay? And that covers protecting children from abuse and maltreatment, preventing them from getting harmed. And I think we all understand that. Now, who is at risk of abuse? Every child. Every single child is at risk. Every child. Now, when it comes to children with disabilities are 3 to 4 times more likely to be abused than any other children in any other category. Why? Because some of them are unable to express themselves because of the perception that we have about these children. I'm sure many of us, when we were in school, we know when they say you are an olodo, there were a lot of children that people called olodo, that people insulted, okay? And many of those children had disabilities. But the way that we abuse these children, sometimes, as we move along, I'm going to talk a little bit about types of abuse. But I know that we have all had that experience, maybe in the classes where we found ourselves in, but I don't want to believe that anybody is still doing that. Okay? So very, very important that we have this information. Now, for you to be able to protect the children, safeguard them, you have to know different types of abuse, okay? So we have 4 main types of abuse. And I know that many of us are familiar with this. So you have physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. There are many criteria that fall under physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and emotional abuse. You have to be able to identify when that is happening. You have to be able to recognize that kind of abuse and be able to decipher when a child is acting in a way that is a bit different from what is expected of that child. So then you can start suspecting that maybe the child has been physically abused, or it could be that a child will disclose to you that there has been some form of physical abuse. But you need to be aware as an educator about these different types of abuse. I put honor-based abuse there, okay? Because many times it's an area that gets overlooked. So in the name of religion, in the name of our culture, our tradition, a lot of children get abused. It could be marrying off children at the age of 12 years, which is against the law. But that happens because of probably religion or culture. That's what is acceptable where we come from. It's something that we really need to be aware of. When we talk about physical abuse, we're talking about maybe hitting someone, you understand, drowning, all those type of things. And then we have sexual abuse, and I know we know what that is, okay? So it could be directly, maybe there's been some sort of penetration, okay? Or it could be indirectly. Maybe you're allowing a child to watch sexual contents, and definitely not acceptable there. So that's for sexual abuse. Neglect is, you have talked about the rights of a child. So we know that children have rights, and you should be able to identify those rights. So if any of those rights are not being met by the parents, you're overlooking them, then the child is being neglected. It could be by the parents, it could be by the teacher, it could be anyone. Okay, and it's really, really important that we go and do a little more research on this. We don't have enough time to discuss all the features of this type of abuse, what it looks like, what to expect, and how you're going to be able to help with that. Now we have emotional abuse. This happens a lot. Sometimes children get abused in the classroom. Our use of words, making them feel like they are not important. You understand, they cannot attain their targets. Those kind of words that we use can be a form of emotional abuse for the children. All right, so let's look at this case study here. All right. Now, Omoumi is a 12-year-old girl. Okay, she lives with her parents, and then a young couple recently moved into one of the apartment buildings next door. Omoumi's mom asked her to deliver a welcome basket to the new neighbors. You know how mommies can be, oh, let's go and welcome the neighbors, give them maybe some cake or whatever it is, okay? And while she's at the house, the couple encourages Omoumi to watch pornography and smoke some marijuana. Okay, so let me throw this at you. Would you categorize this as abuse? And what type of abuse do we have here? You have an opinion on this, please put a message in the chat box. What type of abuse is this? I can see sexual abuse, grooming. Excellent. Sexual abuse, really. Sexual abuse. So I think we have a good understanding of what type of abuse this is. Thank you. I wish we had more time to go into this, but we have to move on. Thank you, everyone. Psychological, I think, sexual abuse. What type of abuse is this? Neglect. Some people feel it's neglect. Interesting, because definitely it was the parents' responsibility to deliver the welcome package, and they have sent their child, not knowing what family lives there. They don't even know the new neighbors, and send their child to go off there. Thank you very, very much, everyone. All right. Now, we're going to watch a short video just for 1 minute, because we're going to be moving on to safeguarding. Okay? And then we're going to make the connection between safeguarding and child protection.
And to me, is extraordinarily wide. I don't think a lot of us think of safeguarding. So to me, safeguarding, particularly now, is about getting away from this idea of what's happening just in the family home. It's about the whole of society. Thinking about all the different situations young people and vulnerable adults might be at risk.
But very, very simply, it's about protecting children from harm, spotting signs that they are at risk of doing something about it.
Good practice. The role of the adults and the other children, create an environment and a space each child can thrive, develop, and happy. It's not just about protecting immediate harm that might be right now. It's about taking a bigger view of their life, and about putting things into place to prevent them from being at risk.
Safeguarding means whatever else you're doing in your day as a member of staff in the school, the most important thing is to ensure every child is safe. And not just in school, but that you know they're safe outside school.
So safeguarding too, right? Putting into place a lot of, they are being risk. But
Safeguarding is really about the actions or preventative measures that an education setting schools are putting in place to children and young people they're working with, ensure their well-being and the best possible outcomes for them. Whereas if we're talking about duty of care, that's more about the obligation, the moral obligation, the legal obligation, those working in schools for the well-being and safety of children.
duty of care is always comes. So duty of care is they look after us, bills, etc. Everything is next. This fundamentally is duty of care that we and the families. Our responsibility.
All right. So I'm sure you've been able to identify some keywords there. I'm sure some of you must have heard proactive. You must have had policies, procedures that are in place by the school. So now that we know what child protection is and what abuse is about, okay, then we have to move on to what do we do as a school? What do we do as individuals? What measures have we put in place to ensure that this abuse does not take place? And even if something happens, what is our action plan? What are the steps that we're going to take? That's where safeguarding comes into place. Now, what is safeguarding? Okay, so the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children says that safeguarding is the action taken to promote the welfare of children and protect them from harm. You're talking about protecting children from abuse, maltreatment, preventing harm to the children's health, okay, ensuring that children grow in the provision of a safe and effective care, okay? So now, what can we do to ensure that this happens before it happens? Now, let's look at some of the steps to take as a school. What should you be looking at? What should we as educators be looking at? Now, every school must have a designated safeguarding unit. It's a requirement. And along with that, you should have a school counselor or a pastoral team. Because if there is a safeguarding concern or if a child is abused in any way, whether it be emotional, neglect, whatever it is, there should be someone that they can speak to, disclose to, and then someone who is going to handle the ripple effects of that abuse. That's your school counselor, your pastoral heads, whoever that may be in your school. You should be looking at attendance, okay? Are children punctual to school? Are they even coming to school? Because remember, when we talked about the rights of a child, one of the rights of a child is their right to education. So if a child is not coming to school, if they're not punctual, then their rights are being infringed upon, and that is a form of abuse. So you should be tracking this information. You have to have a robust behavior management plan, which means that you're tracking behavioral issues as they occur, all right? And when you track behavioral issues, you can identify if there's a trend that is going on. And when you identify that trend, sometimes within that trend, you're able to identify safeguarding issues if it's happening repeatedly. And then you're supposed to look at your school environment. Is it safe? Is it safe for the children to move around? Do you have measures in place to ensure that they have safety signs, they know where they're meant to go, where they're not meant to go? All those things are part of your safeguarding procedure. You need to be able to manage your allegations. Okay, when something has happened, how do you manage the allegations? SEN is part of safeguarding. Your pupil voice is part of safeguarding. I think I remember someone saying that the children have a right to be heard. Okay, so do you have in place maybe a student council? When the children are speaking up in class, are you the kind of teacher that shuts them down? Or do you allow them to speak? What policies do you have in place in school to ensure that this is the standard in your school? Health and safety is part of it. Your curriculum, your ICT curriculum, your PSH curriculum. Have you looked at your curriculum? What should the children be knowing? What should they be learning about? In your ICT curriculum, do they understand that cyberbullying is not allowed? How are they meant to be safe online? When you look at your PSH curriculum, do they know about their, sexual relationships? Are they aware of this? Do they understand how to show empathy, kindness, those values that we should imbibe in children? They need that information for your school community to be safe. Okay, your staff conduct, are the teachers behaving appropriately? Your child protection policy, we already talked about the fact that child protection is a part of safeguarding, okay? And all your policies, what policies do you have in place? You need to have safeguarding and child protection policies. You can have a disclosure policy, have a policy on whistleblowing. There are so many policies that we need to have in place in our schools. We can talk a bit more about that as we move along. And there needs to be a whole school awareness drive. Okay, so you can't just say that I know about safeguarding, leaders in the school know about safeguarding, but the parents are not aware, the children are not aware, they don't know who they should speak to if they have to disclose, they don't know what steps will be taken, okay? They don't even understand how to keep themselves safe. So you need to have a DSL in school, like I told you earlier on. You need to have safeguarding statements. So when someone is coming into your school, they need to know what you stand for, okay? You should have a statement at the gate that says, we are a school that safeguards the children. That has to be done. And then maybe you have a visitor's pamphlet. So everyone coming to your school understands that in this school, children have to be safe. And in that pamphlet, you can include information about what you do, what they should do if they notice a safeguarding concern, who they should contact, the designated safeguarding lead, their email address, things like that. Your school newsletters can be a way of creating awareness. Your parent seminars, PTF, PTAs, you understand? Projects, the children can do projects, okay? Your displays, you could use that to create awareness about how they should behave in school, you understand? Cyberbullying, all sorts of things. You can have your class meeting times, your assemblies, have little quizzes for your teachers. Because what happens is that in many schools, we're trained, many people are aware of what safeguarding is and what child protection is, but we tend to forget. Quiz your teachers, 5 questions here and there, just to find out what do they remember. Let this be something that we do monthly, not just something that we do. Everybody is trained on safeguarding, but then we've done this, we did that last year, and then in the years ahead, everybody has forgotten what is required. So all those things should be in place, and your policies. That's creating awareness in the entire school community. Okay, I don't have much time, okay, but just so you know, you should have posters around your school to let all the children know, all the parents know who your designated safeguarding leads are. The children know that they can approach them, and they should be able to, they need to see the pictures. They need to be able to see their pictures all around the school, and let them be smiling, please. So don't be scary. All right. And I don't have much time. I'm so sorry. I'm running out of time. So I'm not going to be able to tell you everything that you need to know. And obviously, this is a very robust topic. Okay. But one thing I want you to take away from this is that child protection is what happens when a child has been abused, when they have dealt with some form of abuse. What do you do? It's more of a reactive thing. When it comes to safeguarding, you're being proactive. What steps have you put in place? What measures have you put in place? That's the difference between child protection and safeguarding. I'm running out of time. If you want to know more, the Lagos State government has a free training for you. COBIS has some trainings for the designated safeguarding lead, the governor's training. They're really, really good. And you can go on Educare to train yourself on safeguarding and child protection. But please, 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 one thing I really want everyone to know is that keeping children safe is everyone's responsibility. And we have to take this very, very serious. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Madueke. Can we please give her a virtual clap for this very beautiful presentation? She has taught us, or she's distinguished what safeguarding and child protection is. She's told us to track our attendance, track the behavior. We must ensure that we have an excellent pupils' voice system. We should ensure that, we know the rights of the children in school. We must have policies on safeguarding, and it is compulsory for every school to have a designated safeguarding lead. And my take here is the fact that there must be a whole school awareness in terms of safeguarding. You cannot have the policies, you cannot talk about safeguarding without, creating that awareness for every member of the school community, including members of your board. Members of the board of governors or board of directors must be aware about safeguarding. And lastly, she said that it is important for us to do refreshers. We should keep having short quizzes, where our teachers and members of the staff are able to retell and recall, trainings on safeguarding, so that you are 100% sure that every member of the school community knows what safeguarding is all about and they know how to act. Thank you again, Mrs. Madweke. God bless you. Please do not leave. Stay on as I bring in our very next speaker, Mrs. Titilola Vivo Adeniyi. She has spent over 10 years in public service, where she has served in different capacities in the Lagos State government. She has been instrumental in ensuring a coordinated response to sexual and gender-based violence in Lagos State. She served as the pioneer coordinator of the State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team, DSVRT, from 2014 up till until it was made a full agency in 2021. She conceived the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team from scratch, an initiative that has been replicated in over 6 states of the Federation. Wow. She drafted and facilitated the ratification of Sex Offenders Register, the mandated reporting policy, as well as the safeguarding and child protection program in Lagos State. She currently serves as the pioneer executive secretary of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency. She's an author of several books for children on domestic violence, civic education, sexual violence, and self-love. She is a public administrator and a lawyer. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Titilola Vivo Adeniyi.
Good afternoon. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Good afternoon. Such a pleasure to be here. It is a great privilege to be here. Hello, sorry. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm having a bit of difficulty sharing my screen. But I'm trying to do that as I'm speaking with you. So good afternoon, good evening, esteemed educators. Such a privilege to be here. I always say that people in the education system or the education sector are really the superheroes, because truly we are moving destinies and shaping lives. So we appreciate you, we celebrate you, and hopefully your reward will not just be in heaven, to be on earth as well. So I'm supposed to speak about the policies that guide safeguarding and child protection in Lagos State. I'm trying to share my screen. I don't know why I'm unable to do this, but perhaps if I could just quickly share this presentation with Secretariat. If Secretariat could be kind enough, please, to help me project it. I don't know why I'm unable to do that. Okay, so Lagos State continues to remain committed to issues that pertain to safeguarding and child protection, and this is visible not just in terms of the laws or the policies that are in existence, but also the institutionalization of support services for our children. We have different organizations, we have different ministries, different departments and agencies that this is what they do. What their ability is to do is to ensure that children are safe. And in the unfortunate instance that the child protection concern is raised, there's a whole welfare pathway that's activated to ensure that the children are safe, and where necessary, tutors are held accountable. So just as a background, what are the guiding frameworks or laws that we have in Lagos State? So we have the Convention on the Rights of the Child, Convention on the Rights of the Child that was enacted in 1989. We also have the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, 1999. These conventions Nigeria is a signatory to these conventions. And then, of course, at the federal level, we have the Child Rights Act in 2003, and Lagos has adopted that act via the Child Rights Law in 2007. It was amended in 2015, and I speak still correct. It's currently undergoing some further amendments. We also have protection against domestic violence law, because obviously, if there are children involved, children witness, oh, thank you so much. Thank you, I'm on slide 3. Children witness abuse, there's a need for their rights to be safeguarded and for them to be protected. Don't forget, we're dealing with crimes, criminal allegations, and so, okay. So since we're dealing with crimes and criminal allegations, we have the criminal law of Lagos State, which was enacted in 2011 and amended in 2015. Thank you. We also have the Family Court of Lagos State Civil Procedure Rules. For those that may not be aware, in Lagos State, we have family courts, which were established as a result of the enactment of the Child Rights Law. In 2014, we able to enact, or rather, introduce the executive order on the Lagos State Sex Offenders Register and mandated reporting. I'll speak a bit more on that as we proceed. And then in 2016, we were able to propose and introduce the executive order on Lagos State Safeguarding and Child Protection Program. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the Child Rights Law. As my colleague, the speaker that spoke before me has taken pains to explain the different rights that children have. But please go ahead. So in the Child Rights Law, the Child Rights Law takes its please go ahead. Thank you. So we refer to what we refer to as basket of rights. The Child Rights Law is a very, very bulky piece of legislation. So what we have is 4 baskets of rights: survival rights, development rights, participation rights, protection rights. I won't do that because this has been discussed by the previous speaker. Please let's go ahead. So we have critical rights: right to survival, right to name, freedom of association and peaceful assembly, freedom of thought, right to private home and family life, right to freedom of movement, right to freedom from discrimination, especially when it involves a child with disability or a child with special needs, right to the dignity of the child, right to leisure, recreation, and cultural activities, right to health services, and of course, right to education. Okay, let's go ahead. So I won't speak much on the child rights because that has been explained. So let's go to the executive order on sex offenders register and mandated reporting. So why is this important? This is important because there's a need for us to be able to create a deterrence when it comes to issues pertaining to sexual abuse, right? For so long, issues of sexual abuse, especially child sexual abuse, occurs because of the culture of impunity. People thinking that they can do it and get away with it. So we found out that one of the greatest deterrents, or one of the ways of deterring abusers or would-be abusers, is to actually have an operational sex offenders where details of sex convicts will be uploaded. Notice I use the word convict. So it's a person that has been convicted. So it's not just that you have a suspicion or there's an allegation. A court of competent jurisdiction will have convicted this person. That person's details would be entered onto the register, and the executive order actually mandates us to publish these details regularly. So we do have that in place since 2014, but in 2021 it actually became backed by law. Then the database, aside from creating a deterrence, The database is also to help schools and child-centered institutions in their background checks. So it's not enough for you to just recruit. It's important for you to conduct background checks because some institutions, some schools have unknowingly recruited the services of a bus driver, and this person has turned out to be a pedophile, right? So part of your safer recruitment procedures, which is actually a very, very key component to safeguarding, is to ensure that you conduct a background check into the sex offenders register to find out if this person has been convicted of any sexual related offense. It's sad, or it's not too encouraging because we've not gotten applications from private schools. I think in the past 1 year, we've gotten an application from just one private school. And perhaps it's because private schools are not aware that this is in the law. And that's why I'm so grateful for this opportunity, to let schools and institutions know that this is a requirement of the law. You want to recruit the services of anybody that has interface or works with children, you have a duty to conduct a background search, find out whether or not this person has been convicted of any sexual related. Now we go to the mandated reporting policy. And this policy basically makes it compulsory for all school administrators, counselors, teachers, social welfare officers, and any other official that has interface and dealing with children to report any suspected actual child abuse or neglect to the state. So it's not enough for you to say you have a hunch. Yes, you could have a hunch, but you have a duty to actually report that hunch. And perhaps maybe later we'll go into, if there's time, we'll talk about the reporting procedure and reporting procedure of how these cases should be escalated. But the truth of the matter is that as a mandated reporter, you have a statutory duty. You can go ahead. You have a statutory duty to report actual or suspected incidents of abuse. Please note, we say actual or suspected. So you suspect. We're not asking you to go and conduct investigations if you are not a social worker, for instance. Perhaps you're a classroom teacher and you suspect, maybe you notice a change in behavior in the child, and you just suspect that this child may be experiencing one form of violence or the other. It's not enough for you to just suspect. The law requires, because you're a mandated reporter, to report such suspicion, right? You have to report it. And report it to the appropriate authority, and then ensure that will activate the referral pathway for the case to be investigated. It's possible that you maybe you overthought it, maybe you find out that there's no actual child protection concern. That's fine. It's better to err on the side of for you not to even report it at all. Okay, so let's go ahead. So legal standard for reporting. It's a reasonable cause. You have a reasonable cause to believe that this child is experiencing abuse, or this child has experienced abuse, right? You are not to determine whether the incident occurred. We are not putting that responsibility on you. You just have a reasonable cause of suspicion. The law requires that you should report. Please note that failure to report suspected abuse or neglect can actually be civil and criminal in nature. Civil in the sense that civil proceedings can be instituted against you because you almost like you are coerced to a wrong, a civil wrong, and then it can be criminal in the sense that you saw a crime, or you have a suspicion that a crime has been committed and you failed to report a crime, and that actually attracts up to 2 years in prison. Okay. All right. So in 2016, as I said earlier, we were able to introduce the executive order on safeguarding and child protection. Please note that this is not just a policy. It's actually an executive order of the state government. And so it has some level of statutory backing. Lagos State government requires that all child-centered institutions, including schools, hospitals, recreation centers, and hospitals that work with children are mandated to have safeguarding and child protection procedures to ensure every child has the right to equal protection. Please note that the explicit aim is to provide clear direction for reporting disclosures of abuse and commitment to the development of good and sound procedures to keep children safe, and that child protection concerns are identified. Referrals are handled sensitively and in ways that support the needs of the child's well-being. Permit me to add at this juncture that we are all bound to work with children. We are all bound by Section 1 of the Child Rights Law, which provides that everything we do, it has to be in the best interest of the child. The first speaker spoke about what you should have. You should have a designated safeguarding and child protection officer. You should create awareness of the existence of this official. Your school should be known for safety and total commitment to ensuring total protection of children in your facility or in your school. In the past 2 years, Lagos State government has embarked on sensitization drives with a view to letting institutions, child-centered institutions, not just public schools, but even private schools as well, on the existence of this executive order. Because yes, we believe that enlightenment is superior to enforcement. But when we conduct our monitoring or we go for post to ascertain compliance, we found out that it's not even enough to have a child protection policy codified in a document. Is it being used? Is it being implemented? Have we identified the designated safeguarding child protection officer? If we stop any child on the corridor and we say, if you're having any issues, who should you speak with? Can that child tell us who they should speak with, right? So it's not enough for it to just be policy, in a document. It has to come alive, and it comes alive when we all ensure full implementation of it. And so, yes, I said it, so it applies to all schools, child-centered structures, all schools, period. All schools, it's not just public schools, it's all schools. And it is mandatory for all institutions to adopt a child protection policy. And it also talks about the need for safe recruitment processes to be in place. Many a times we have several cases that emanate from schools where it's alleged that the teacher, the school bus driver, the janitor, has allegedly defiled a child or defiled several children. This could have been avoided if safer recruitment procedures were followed. The essence of the child protection policy or the safeguarding and child protection policy is also to clearly, articulately define the reporting protocol procedure. So we don't want situations where a child reports, first of all, let's say a child even reports to the teacher, and then the teacher, doesn't know who to report to next. Or let's assume the teacher knows who to report to, and the teacher reports to the principal, for instance. And the principal says, oh, I don't want my school's name to be in the news, let's address this in-house and, let's make sure that word doesn't get out. You've reported, but you've not fulfilled the legal requirements that exist or that is obtainable in terms of reporting. Please note again that failure of the designated safeguarding child protection officer to ensure that the child protection program is adhered to in your respective institutions can be subjected to both criminal and civil action. Okay, that's what I had. Okay, so very quickly I'll speak about the criminal law of Lagos State. And I think it's important that we realize that we're dealing with criminal allegations, and perhaps that will reorientate it to help us in treating these issues with the city and the seriousness at which it is there. I don't know if you are aware, but if a person is found guilty of having sexual intercourse with a person below the age of 18, person below the age of 18 is a child or a lady, it can be sentenced to up to life imprisonment. We have the offense of rape, which is also life imprisonment. We also have the offense of unlawful sexual assault by penetration. And that one is basically saying that if you penetrate another person, and if the penetration is not limited to the vagina of a girl, for instance, if you penetrate anally, if you penetrate the mouth, the ear, the nose, with the male genitalia, or anything else. So we had instances of a school where we were asked to investigate. A teacher allegedly inserted spoon into the 3-year-old's vagina, right? That is not rape, that's not defilement, but that is sexual assault by penetration. Okay, so it's important for you to know that that kind of scenario, if the case goes to court, the person can be convicted for up to life imprisonment. There's also the attempts, the fact that you attempt to commit rape or attempt to sexually assault another person. You won't say, oh, go and sin no more, we thank God for his mercies. Yes, we should always thank God. But it is a crime, and it's punishable by up to 14 years imprisonment. Touching, when you touch somebody sexually, you touch a child sexually, you know, and we're not even going to talk about consent, because when we're dealing with children, issue of consent doesn't even arise. Why? Because the law assumes that the child lacks the capacity to give consent. And that one is when the person touches the child sexually, it amounts, or it can attract up to 3 years imprisonment. Of course, sexual harassment, it's unfortunate now, we're actually even receiving allegations of sexual harassment coming from primary schools. You know, before now, we thought it was just in the higher institutions, but our society has so degenerated to the point where we're even getting cases from primary schools, cases of sexual harassment. Of course, causing another person to engage in sexual activity, you know. Of course, if it involves a child, the issue of consent doesn't arise anymore. Permit me to do a bit of advocacy here. We've moved from your breast and vagina for a girl and the penis for a boy are your private parts. What we're saying now is that the whole body is private. We're also saying that we need to move from don't allow anybody to touch you to you too don't touch anybody, because we have pedophiles now, predators that are becoming smarter. So they are not doing the touching, they are asking the children to do the touching. And so we need to tell our children that you don't allow anybody to touch you, and you too do not touch anybody, right? And that if the person is asking you to do that, you have a duty, you should speak up, you should scream and attract attention where the scenario allows you to do so. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, so in 2021, Lagos State government established the Domestic and Sexual Violence, or rather enacted the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency Law. And that's the law that actually created the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency. But it also created or introduced some new, interesting and innovative sections, criminal sections. So section 32, remember I said before now, it was the executive order on safeguarding on sex offenders was just an executive order. Now it's actually statutory provision. And so basically child pornography, and I think this is something we need to realize, not just as educators, but as human beings, as people that are on social media. If you receive content that is, if you receive maybe a video or a picture that is sexually explicit, maybe it involves an adult having sexual intercourse with a child. If it's found out that you have such content on your phone, you could actually become prosecuted for child pornography. If you share that material, and you are not a law enforcement official, you share that content, you could actually be convicted for child pornography, up to 14 years imprisonment. There's also section 25 that talks about sexual favors in exchange with, that is also sexual harassment. And you know, that's not limited to higher institutions. Recently, we had calls to come in and investigate a case of a student. She's I think JSS 1. She was in bid of trying to secure admission. She met this teacher from the school her dream school. And the teacher told her that, you know, if you sleep with me, I will facilitate you securing admission, right? Aside from even the penetration, because he actually eventually defiled that girl, there's also this section of sexual favors in exchange for grades and admission, which is up to 3 years in prison. Section 26, frustrating investigation. This is very important, very, very important as parents. You know, this section is saying that a case is being investigated, particularly a case of abuse, and you try to frustrate investigation. You try to insist that that case does not see the light of day. You can't be charged for this offense, and you can't be incarcerated for up to 3 years. Willfully making false statements, yes, that's 3 years. And then section 30, which I believe is very much up the alley of schools, is concealment of sexual offenses. And it provides that any person, parent, guardian, school proprietor, neighbor, or religious leader who knowingly conceals any sexual offense commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a term of 3 years custodial sentence. So we can't afford to be concealing sexual offenses that come to knowledge. We duty to report and escalate appropriately. If not, we may actually be criminally liable. Okay, so this is just image and pictorial depiction of publishing details of sex convicts. Okay, Mr. Michael, he defied the child. That's really what my session is about. Please go ahead. The sound has gone off. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Please, let's go ahead. Okay, so for us in Lagos, what we have is a protocol response for child abuse. It depends. So if there is an offending parent or an offending adult, we may make a judgment call. When I say we, I mean the relevant agencies of government. I'll speak to them very soon. So the child may need to be rescued, the child may need to be rescued and placed in protective custody when necessary. The perpetrator will be arrested. Where necessary, the child is taken to the hospital. If it's sexual abuse and it happens, not even just within the golden hour period, but it happens, we need to ensure that the child is safe. We reduce the chances of the child contracting STIs or STDs. And also we need to document and help, and we need to preserve evidence, right? Then in Lagos, we have we can actually take the child away from the abusive environment and place the child in protective custody. So that entails us going to court to secure a protection order, and that can be facilitated by either the Office of the Public Defender, the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, the DAs, the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, and of course, such applications are taken in the magistrate court. Because when we talk about sexual abuse, remember I said they carry up to life imprisonment. So we try, and obviously because of our zero tolerance policy, we try to ensure that the courts do not admit such suspects on bail. So the person is going to be, the alleged abuser will be remanded. And where government feels that this child should be taken to protective custody, the child is placed in the shelter or reunited with a trusted family member. And then the Ministry of Youth and Social Development ensures that the child's progress is monitored and recorded. Let's go ahead. Okay. I don't know if you can see this, but I think the Secretariat already has this. So this is like the reporting procedure, just to guide institutions when you respond to the child's needs. If you are the first responder, listen to the child. I don't need to speak too much on this, but basically it's important for institutions, child-centered institutions, to have interface with government. And I think this is the point that should be emphasized. Many a times, government gets to know about these cases in the social media, or it's not a direct line of reporting. And I do not think it ought to be so. Government is here to assist institutions. We are not witch-hunting any child, any school. We are just seeking to ensure that children are safe, irrespective of where they are. So for your purposes, they are safe in the schools. And in the unfortunate instance that the child protection concern is brought to your attention, you have a duty to actually interface and report officially to government. So it's important that we reiterate that. It's only, I think in the past 1 year or 2 years, I think it's only one school that has actually written to us. When I say us, I mean government, to inform us that this is what has happened, and we need you to come in and then do the needful. Let's go ahead, please. Okay, so superheroes in charge of safeguarding and child protection. So it's the Ministry of Youth and Social Development that really drives this process. It's within their ambit. And then because we look at child protection and safeguarding from the multidisciplinary approach, that's why you have all these other departments, agencies, and ministries on the screen. Office of Education Quality Assurance, of course, they are in charge of ensuring standards are upheld. Lagos State Police Command, because we're dealing with criminal allegations. Of course, Ministry of Education, currently Ministry for OEQA, the agency, Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, when it involves domestic or sexual violence. Office of the Public Defender, the Child Rights Law actually provides that, thank you, the Child Rights Law actually provides that OPD, Office of the Public Defender, is to ensure that the rights of children are upheld. Lagos State Safety Commission, Lagos State Judiciary, the family courts, and of course, non-governmental organizations doing amazing work in the community. That's why I think I'm on the last slide. Okay, yes, thank you. So just to say that we are all mandated reporters as far as we have interface and we work with children. We have a duty to report actual suspected incidents of abuse. And perhaps you want to report anonymously. Please note that the law actually allows you to do that. You can report without your identity being disclosed. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Titi Lola Vivo Adeniyi. Thank you so much for the insights you've given us for what you do at Lagos State. Thank you for letting us know more about the rights of the child, the importance of the sex offenders register. Thank you for empowering the schools to do background checks and letting us know that we have a duty to report cases of sexual and child abuse. Thank you for reiterating the safeguarding policies for us and for making it important for all schools to do our checks regularly. And one thing I got out of your presentation, one main thing is a line of communication. And I think that I will want Aisen to share that last slide or the second to the last slide to all schools so that we know what to do when we have issues on child abuse and sexual violence in our schools. Thank you again, Mrs. Vivo Adeniyi. God bless you. Please do not go. I'm sure we have questions at the end of this session that the participants may want you to answer. Thank you again. Now I'm going to be introducing two speakers from the Council of British International Schools, COBIS. They're going to do a joint presentation, I believe. Janet Quinn is an experienced head teacher who has worked in a diverse range of schools in England and Mexico City. She gained the National Qualification for Head Teachers, NPQH, in 2006 and was subsequently trained as a local leader in education in England. She has extensive experience of school review and supporting effective school improvement. Her first-hand experience of being a designated child protection officer in schools means that she is passionate about creating a whole school safeguarding ethos. In her current role as Assistant Director of Accreditation and Professional Learning, she checks that effective safeguarding procedures are in place. Louise Bell is a safeguarding officer of COBIS. Her experience in education has involved serving as a school governor for a primary school and a safeguarding lead governor for 6 years. She served on the Teaching and Learning Committee and Safeguarding Committee. She was also chair of the advisory board of a children's center in the England borough of Richmond upon Thames. Before that, Louise had a management role in customer relations at British Airways. We welcome Janet and Louise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Jamid, and thank you so much for inviting us and to our Aisen chair, Mrs. Oluwademi Yalola. Colin, our CEO, had a fantastic trip out recently to Nigeria and met many of you on this call today, I'm sure, and he was delighted with his trip and spent much a lovely dinner with the chair today that joins us today. So he does say a big hello, and he's so pleased that we're here today to talk about what COBIS is involved in safeguarding and safer recruitment. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen now. There we go. I'll just have it on. Just need to have it on a full screen. Slideshow, there we go. Is that right? I'm not sure if that's sharing properly, but can everybody see that? Thumbs up, Jeanette. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to talk briefly about what COBIS, what representation COBIS does have in safeguarding, which can be quite UK centric sometimes, but it is very much something we can share globally. And a lot of it is sort of global anyway. But COBIS was one of the founding members of the International Task Force for Child Protection, and that's a cross association and feeding back any key updates to our members and indeed non-members around the world. The Independent School Council and is a safeguarding group that the COBIS sits on. And that does give key updates to the children, keeping children safe in education, which is a fantastic mandate in this country, in the UK, which can be very widely used worldwide to reference good practice in safeguarding and indeed safer recruitment. So if it's very easy to Google that. I would strongly recommend you do Google that if you're not aware of keeping children safe in education. Some of it can be sort of updates for UK schools particularly, and a lot of UK schools have to follow that by law, some of the mandates in that document, but it is very useful for schools overseas. Recently, COBIS was involved in contributing to the written and verbal evidence in the ICSA inquiry. So that's something that we will be putting up on our website for a link to, and in our up and coming safeguarding newsletter. And it's got some, out of that has come some really good recommendations of what we should be doing as school leaders in safe recruitment going forward. COBIS contributes to the ICMEC portal, which COBIS members can access, but indeed, I'm sure it is accessible for all as well. We also have some fantastic links with ACRO, who is responsible for the International Child Protection Certificate. And with that link with ACRO, we have a good link with the National Crime Agency, which is fantastic sort of key knowledge of anything sort of for sharing sort of any criminal activity, and ACRO very much updates us on that. We have quarterly meetings with ACRO. We do have links with the DBS. The DBS is something that overseas schools now can't access. I can talk a little bit about that in a second. And the Teaching Regulation Agency, we have access to that for the prohibition checks that we can offer to COBIS members and non-members at any time. We did help launch the International Child Protection Certificate along with CEOP back in 2012. So we were very instrumental in that, and we are a sort of a global ambassador for the ICPC with ACRO. So on to safer recruitment with COBIS. We have a team at COBIS that supports safer recruitment. We've got a dedicated executive team at HQ for our schools overseas. We have I'm the safeguarding officer, so I get lots of emails for either the prohibition checks or any sort of advice, online meetings on request with any of our designated safeguarding leads if they need it, or any of our head teachers. We've got a dedicated area on our website for safe recruitment, and also in our members area, and they've got some really great resources, a really good safer recruitment checklist, but we are very generous with our resources, so you do not have to be a COBIS member. Please do get in touch if you want to access some of the resources. The accreditation standard 1A, I think Jeanette might touch a little bit more on that, but it is obviously when you're going through an accreditation process through COBIS membership, that is sort of more relevant in there. But the actual standard 1A is actually quite a good checklist for all to sort of to use, and that can be found on our website. So do go and have a look at that. So the prohibition order checks is something that one of the areas I deal with quite regularly, and that is a check, sort of 4 areas, really relating to your teachers who have sort of registered or taught in the UK. So it sort of goes alongside our esteemed speaker talking about the sex offender register in Nigeria. I think that's the sort of similar sort of mandate over there, and it'd be interesting to have the share of how schools access that in Nigeria. But for the prohibition checks here in the UK, if you do have on your single central register teachers who have taught in the UK, you can contact me and I can advise you further on that, but you can also request a check through us. There's a small admin charge per teacher, and it is available to all, member or non-member. So please do get in touch if you want more information on that. I mentioned the International Child Protection Certificate. This is the only criminal record check for your staff who have either lived or worked in the UK. The enhanced DBS with the barred list check is not at the moment available for overseas schools. So the ICPC is something that we thoroughly recommend that you do for those staff, not just teachers, all your staff who have lived or worked in the UK. And that would obviously be noted on your single central register. Jeanette is going to talk a little bit more about the SCR in a second. ACRO also delivers some really great webinars on our website, which you can all access. And as I've mentioned, the safeguarding update, we do the sort of a biannual one, but we do updates throughout the year. But the safeguarding update, if you go back and look on past copies on our website, it's really useful because we do lots of links to resources on there. So just have a little browse through. I think we've got the past couple of years up there. So it's a really useful update to go back and have a look at. Of course, our resources, as I've mentioned, all available for you. And then this is sort of more for our COBIS members. We do a connected session for our designated safeguarding leads. So we know that they are so key in your schools, and Jeanette may again touch a little bit more on that, but the designated safeguarding lead should have a deputy. The DSL shouldn't necessarily be your head teacher. And yeah, if you want more information, we're happy to help with that. And that leads on to the safeguarding training that has been mentioned in the previous presentation. And yeah, those links I think that somebody was asking about, they can be, if you go to our website, the up and coming Safeguarding Alliance training. So our partner, our newly formed formal partnership with the Safeguarding Alliance now, they will be running the courses throughout the year, but you can also go to the Safeguarding Alliance Direct as well. But yeah, they are fantastic courses that most of our HQ exec team have also been on. and they are really, really useful. And out of the courses comes lots of resource links as well, so it's worth it. And I think someone's mentioned the EduCare courses via for safer recruitment online. They're also available, so do go check out EduCare. So I will pass on to my wonderful colleague, Jeanette, who's going to talk through some more practical tips of how to keep our children safe when we're recruiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. And it's absolutely fabulous to be here and that so many people are in one place talking about the importance of keeping our children safe. And obviously, safer recruitment is absolutely crucial because we want to check that we have the right people working with us in our schools and in our organisations. So the first point has been touched on by our other speakers, the importance of having a high profile. Your school or organisation needs to be a place that shouts, we're a safeguarding school. An example of this is we were recruiting and someone rang up and said, oh, your school sounds absolutely fabulous. When they realised that everything would be checked and we were committed to safeguarding, they didn't contact us again. So that's the first barrier to put up to check that we have only the right people working in our organisations. References are absolutely key, and it's important then to ring up and follow up references. There should be at least 2 references requested for each member of staff, and actually making up that follow-up phone call is crucial. First of all, it checks that the reference did actually come from the person that said that they had sent in the reference, but also somebody on the phone might discuss things, positive things and things that might trigger some concerns. No staff should be in school without a reference, and if there is a good reason why somebody is, there should always be a risk assessment in place and that person shouldn't be alone with the child. Now, all your safeguarding information when going through safer recruitment should be kept on a single central record, and this is a great way of having all information in one place. It should record the names of your staff, when they started with you, the police checks that have taken place, the fact that there's been 2 references, qualifications, identity checks, all in one place, and this should be monitored by your DSL. We're all fallible, and also it shouldn't be down to one person to be keeper of all information. So it's really important for that single central record to be monitored. Now, the next point I've put on is objectivity. And this is really important. Sometimes, well, all of us, we've got our own preconceptions. We come and we can see what we want to see. So when you're interviewing for new staff, it's really important to be as objective as possible. So, for example, when asking questions, first of all, have a team asking the questions so that you've got different perceptions, and also make it objective by having, for example, numbers for each question. So each member of the team might score 3 or 5 for every single question and add them up at the end. Always include, obviously, safeguarding questions to see how the person would react to different safeguarding issues. I think it's important to see what hasn't been said and what are the gaps. For example, when you're looking through the application forms, if a member of staff has moved from one school to another school each year, the question must be, why is this? Why do they keep moving? They may keep moving countries. Why? So look for what's not said and be proactive in asking those questions. I think ethos and values is really important. It's important to find the person that suits your school and fits in with your school. And through all the speakers have spoken very wisely about the fact that it's a whole school process. It's not one person's responsibility. It's every one of us listening here today to check that we have a strong safeguarding culture within our school. One top tip I do is when interviewing, I also once I've done the interview, at some point I will ask other members of staff to walk staff around the prospective candidate around the school. And I've had a couple of interesting times when the people interviewed have been absolutely incredible when interviewing them, but actually when talking to other people and being off their guard, other members of my team have come back and said, please don't, Jeanette, don't interview that person. You know, and we realised there was a mishmash to the act in the interview and the reality of the person walking around the school. So it's about keeping your eyes and ears open all of the time. But do know, as Louise said, that there's a whole string of resources available at COBIS. Do use them. Do ask us if you've got any questions. And as Louise said, for our accreditation scheme, number one is a really good way of just checking as an audit and a checklist that you've got everything safely in place. And finally, it's for me just to say, what a fantastic event, and thank you so much for letting Louise and I be part of it. Thank you. We're open for any questions.
Thank you. And I've just put my my contact details on there, and please do get back to us, and I can forward on any questions to Jeanette as well. So do take a note of the email address, and I'll happily share the presentation afterwards anyway with through Mrs. Jamid if necessary. I'll stop sharing now because I know that didn't work too well, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise, and thank you very much, Janet, for the wonderful presentation. I'm happy that you have given school leaders here more information about the DBS checks and the criminal record checks for all our international staff. I'm happy that you have said that schools who are not COBIS members are free to access resources from COBIS, and I'm sure you'll be sending us links, for all schools interested. Thank you for reminding us about the single central record and why it is important for us to keep that. And for Janet, thank you for reminding us about hiring right and what to do to prevent, people who do not have good experiences to apply to our schools. Thank you for the statement that we need to put out that will serve as a barrier. And thank you for reminding us to always have references, especially previous school. I really want to thank all our speakers. I want to thank Mrs. Uzochi Madwekwe. I want to thank Mrs. Titi Layo, Titiola Vivo Adeniyi, Janet, and Louise. Thank you for the wonderful sessions we have had with you. I'm going to leave the room open now for questions and answers. So please be ready to answer questions from the participants. Before we start asking the questions, can we all please clap for all our speakers, please? Please can we clap for all our speakers? We are really grateful. We are really grateful. Thank you. Thank you. We have a question already, and I think I'm going to address, I think I want Janet to answer this question. When sexual abuse happens between children, involving two minors, what is the position of the law? I would like Titiola to answer this, and I want COBIS to also give us an insight on this as well. So when sexual abuse happens between children that's involving two minors, what is the position of the law? Mrs. Viva Adeniyi, please, can you please come and answer this for us?
Okay, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. And so I think I need more information. I would like to know the age or the ages of the children, because we have what we refer to as criminal age of responsibility. So if a child is above the age of 13, and it's found out that maybe a 13-year-old boy has sexual intercourse with a 12-year-old girl, Or perhaps it's even 13-year-old boy with a 13-year-old girl. You know, they are now above the age of criminal responsibility. So at that point in time, we're going to be looking at the child justice system. The child justice system is not to criminalize or to punish children. Rather, it is to rehabilitate them, provide counseling, and if it's found that, you know, this particular child or these children have a case to answer, then they may be remanded, but it would be like as an option of last resort.
Thank you very much, Titi. Just Janet, have anything to add to that?
Yes, just to say it's always finding out as much information as you possibly can, because under 13 those children would not be prosecuted but require help. And why are they showing those behaviours? What's happened? What's the history? So it's those questions. And I suppose it might be useful at this moment just to highlight as well things like, for example, through play, through actions, children do act out things, and it's about asking those questions and providing that holistic support to those children. So it will be looking at how to support, how to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have 4 hands raised. Patience, can you help me unmute Julius Ochang? Julius Ochang. Julius, can you unmute, please, and ask a question? Patience, can you unmute Julius, please? While we wait for him to be unmuted, can we unmute Olajumoke Akerele? Olajumoke Akerele. Julius Olajumoke, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question? I think we can only afford to take 5 questions today. All right. Also, Maka, can you please ask a question? I can see you're unmuted.
Okay, I wanted to ask similar question regards to the minor. So the question has been clear. Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Emmanuel, Analo, Marianne Mezu, can you please unmute and ask a question?
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
Praise. We can hear you, Praise. Go ahead, Praise.
Everyone. Okay. I'm Praise from Thames Valley College, Ogun State. And my question is this. I have a case before me of a male child about the age of 15. And then he said he was sexually abused by a male maid while he was young. And then he's been having these issues trying to overcome that particular situation. So how can the child be helped at this point? Although I've been trying my best to give some solutions, but I think he still needs more. So I'm grateful for this training. And then I would like to know more on how that child can be helped at this point, because I believe he's going through some emotional.
Okay, thank you. Can Mrs. Adeniyi answer this, please? Mrs. Adeniyi.
Yes, thank you so much. So please, I know that Ogun State has a sexual assault referral center. Unfortunately, I've forgotten the name of the center. And at that center, I know that there are child psychologists that can provide psychosocial support therapy for that child to help him on his road to healing. It's important that we ensure that these children or this particular child receives professional help, professional support. And I would really encourage that you take advantage of that service. It's the Sexual Assault Referral Center. And I believe it's run by the Ogun State government in partnership with UNFPA. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Israel Yamo, can you please ask your question? Israel Yamo.
Okay, thank you very much. I have 3 questions. The first one goes to Mrs. Madweke. She was, during the last part of her presentation, she rushed through that, the reporting procedure for handling a child protection issue in a school. That's the reporting procedure. I want her to throw more light on that. Then the other question, my other question goes to Mrs. Bible Adeniyi. How do we request a check of the criminal record register? Is it through the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Youth and Culture? And then finally to Louis Bell, the single central record, can we get a template of what the content should be? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Israel Yamo. Okay, Mrs. Madokwe, he's asking for the reporting procedure. Can you please throw more light on that?
All right, Israel. I'm sorry I had to rush through that. Basically, your school should have a designated safeguarding lead, and that is who you should report to. If you notice a concern, okay, I would assume that your school will have a form for you to fill. So you should bring that to the attention of your designated safeguarding lead, and then they will take it forward from there. I'm sorry, the reporting channels, I wanted to share that with you, but I wasn't able to. But what should normally happen is that you have a concern, you do not investigate. It's not the job of the teacher to investigate. You report it, and then it's taken up from there. Safeguarding is trained on how to handle the concerns. And if it is a case of abuse, it will either be, the parents will definitely be informed. The school will take action. And if you need to involve the government, if you need to involve the police, then they will be involved. But that's the job of the police. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ms. Ruva. So now, can Mrs. Adeni please answer the question regarding accessing the offenders register?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. So we just need a letter addressed to the Honorable Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice. I can type out the address, and our turnaround time is between 24 to 48 hours for you to get a response. So it's just a letter indicating the details of this person you want to, your intending employee, and we'll conduct the checks and revert. So I'll just include on the chat the details of how the letter should be addressed.
Thank you very much. And then to Louise, he wants a template for the single centrals record. How can he get one?
Yeah, I believe there might have been one in one of the safeguarding updates, but I can certainly send that through. But you're very much customizing it into your own school community and your own country. But you need the basics of the name, the date of birth, the ID checks, the reference checks, the police criminal record checks, the prohibition checks. But any template you get, sometimes schools can panic that they can't meet everything on that criteria. So you do have to customize it to your own country. It would be very useful actually for, I think it was Mrs. When Titulala, the sex offender register. How do schools actually access that? That would be quite an interesting one to share as well, if she can. Because I think that is the equivalent for in Nigeria for our prohibition checks, I believe. But yes, I can certainly share a template with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, Mercy and Julius, do you have questions? If you don't have questions, we need to round up. Julius and Mercy, can you please unmute yourself? All right. I want to, Patience, do we have room for 2 more questions, Patience?
Yes, we do.
All right, so can you please unmute Praise again? I see Praise again. He's asked the question before.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity again. I have a child of 15 years old. He said he was sexually abused at a young age, but he's 15 now. And then he really needs help at this point. I don't know how you could advise what measures could be taken to help him out at this point, because most times he's lost. When he's in class, in his academics, he's lost and he needs help. So I would like advice that will be helpful that I can give to him at this point that will bring him out of that situation, because he said he's filled with hatred at this point. So it's really affecting him and I would need advice, please.
Mrs. Adeni, help with this. Or do you want a specific person to answer you? Yes. Mrs. Adeni, can you please?
Hello.
Okay. So I think what we said was there's a need for the child to receive psychosocial support and therapy provided by perhaps a clinical psychologist or a child psychologist to help him process the trauma, because child sexual abuse is a traumatic incident. So to help him process the trauma, to help him share his story with a professional that can assist him in receiving therapy and support. And I don't know what states I don't know if you're in Lagos. If you're in Lagos, we have different services that you can access at no cost to this child or to his family.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Adeni. Thank you.
Can I just add to that, if that's all right? I think yes. With a lot of these sort of cases, which are very harrowing to hear about, it is all about getting the team in the school as wide as you can. So your designated safeguarding lead does need that support and does need that that deputizing. I think somebody maybe have asked the question of should they be the guidance counselor as well? And I think that is just stretching it. So as much as you can, just make sure your team is as big as you possibly can make it for supporting children, because you may have a lot of sort of resource there within your school. So and you could make sure that all of your staff will sort of apt to sort of deal with this sort of things and have the training. So make sure that all of your staff have got the most current safeguarding training, I think is key.
Thank you very much, Louise. Thank you. In summary, I think from what we have all heard today, it is important for us to safeguard our children, important for us to make our children safe. So we all need to do the safeguarding training. It's important for every member of the school community to do the safeguarding training. It's also important for different schools to have a whole school awareness. The children need to know what safeguarding is all about. The children need to know what we have put in place to safeguard them. The children need to be empowered to speak about the challenges, to speak about abuses, to speak about anything that they're going through at home. The staff need the training. The staff need to be empowered. The staff need that structure to know what the line of communication is. The parents of the different schools need to know what the schools have in place for safeguarding and what is expected for them to do as members of the school community. Besides the parents, besides the teachers and the children, the Board of Governors also need to know about safeguarding. They need to go through the safeguarding training. Every member of the school community, every vendor coming into your school for extracurricular activities need to go through the safeguarding course. And when we have all done all of that, then we can say that we have put structures in place to safeguard the children in schools. Schools also need to have policies. on safeguarding, and the staff need to know what these policies are all about. Schools need to know the policies, that the Lagos state government or the government of the different states have in place for safeguarding the children. We need to liaise with the Lagos state or your state government. We need to be informed about the sex of offenders register. We need to report, cases to the government or risk being persecuted by the government. And then we need to learn or know how to recruit, right. We need to know the statements to put out there to deter pedophiles from applying to our schools. Even after we have recruited staff into our schools, we need to check for references. We need to continue to have our eyes open to see that our children are safe. And from all that we have heard today, the Lagos state government is here to support us. COBIS is here to support us. Aisen is here to support us. And I pray that, that we have all been empowered to safeguard our children. We have all been empowered to safeguard our schools and to recruit right. Thank you, Mrs. Mabuekwe. Thank you, Mrs. Adeniyi. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Louise, for these wonderful presentations. I want to thank Aisen for making this available to the Association of International Schools in Nigeria. Mrs. Arofin, I'm handing over to you now.
Thank you so much. Good evening. What an excellent event this has been. Thank you so much. I'd like to give the vote of thanks now, if that's okay. On behalf of the Association of International School Educators of Nigeria, I'd like to extend a special thank you to our speakers for sharing their expertise and knowledge with us this evening. Titilola Viva Adeniyi, the Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, Uzochi Madueke, the Head of Primary at the Riverbank School, Louise Bell and Janet Quinn from the Council of British International Schools. Your insights and perspectives have greatly enriched our understanding of safeguarding, and I'm so sure that we have all gained so much, and you've given us strategies, you've given us vital information that will help us all improve our efforts at safeguarding in our schools. It's obvious that this topic is critical and topical at this time. I recently read somewhere that a poll was taken just last year, and that poll revealed that 88% of Nigerians believe that child abuse is widespread. And these 88% are people who have either heard of or observed or witnessed or have privy to information about child abuse. And of all the different types of child abuse, they identified the worst three as physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. The data is staggering and is alarming. So there is much work to be done. And as stakeholders in schools, apart from our duty of care and our statutory obligations and responsibilities, everything that we've heard this evening shows us how good safeguarding practices can help to protect safety, to promote well-being, and just to generally create an environment of trust in our schools. This speaker series was specially created for us to discuss critical issues. I want to sincerely thank the organizing committee, the Influence Policy Group of Aisen, ably led by our excellent moderator this evening, Mrs. Regina Jemide. Thank you so much for the dedication, the hard work that you have put into making this possible for us. We now know that safeguarding is everybody's business, is everybody's responsibility. And I want to believe that we have a cross-section of teachers, heads, parents, different stakeholders, because we need everybody to be on board before we can finally say that we are ensuring that every child in this country is able to safely and happily reach their full potential. So I'd just like to say a huge thank you to everybody from wherever in the world you're joining us. Thank goodness for technology now. I know we have people from all over Nigeria and beyond on this program. So wherever in the world you are joining us from, thank you very much. And we wish you all an excellent year ahead and a wonderful evening. Thank you.